Diana Walsh, a 62-year-old retired teacher, felt overburdened and confined in her own house as she stood in her messy living room, surrounded by 40 years' worth of accumulated belongings. She was ashamed to bring guests over, possessed clothes she hadn't worn in decades, and couldn't locate key documents. However, Diana turned her disorganized area into a tranquil haven that brought happiness each morning in just 6 months. The key? Here are 7 easy decluttering techniques that didn't need spending weeks going through everything at once or paying pricey organizers. These are not the usual throw everything away techniques. These are kind, senior-friendly methods that respect your past while making room for your future. Are you prepared to learn how Diana took back her house and her tranquility? I am going to reveal the precise 7 decluttering practices that totally changed Diana's life after becoming 60. Regardless of how overwhelming your room feels at the moment, they can also work for you. Diana has already experimented with conventional decluttering techniques, the ones that advise you to discard anything you haven't used in a year. But they never stuck since they didn't take into consideration the emotional bonds we form over the course of many years. These 7 behaviors are distinct. They are especially made for elderly people who like to add extra room and tranquility without feeling as though they are wiping out their past. You can begin with whichever habit feels most achievable for you at the moment, and each one only takes 10 to 15 minutes per day. You will have a clear roadmap at the end of this video that takes into account your particular circumstances, your pace, and your memories. However, I would like to hear from you before we get started. What is the most difficult decluttering task you are currently dealing with? I've read all of them, so please share your troubles in the comments. They might be just what someone else needs to hear today. Let's now explore Diana's journey from feeling confined to her own house to feeling liberated. The 10-minute morning memory sort comes in first. When Diana started with just 10 minutes every morning instead of attempting to tackle full rooms, she made her first significant progress. Here's the secret, though. She wasn't just going through things at random. She developed a mechanism she dubbed her memory sort. Diana would pick a tiny spot, such as a single drawer, a shelf, or even just a corner of her kitchen counter, and drink coffee there every morning. She would arrange everything into 3 groups and set a 10-minute timer. Keeps me content, productive, and prepared to help others today. The sorting itself wasn't the magic. It was in the way she handled every object. She changed everything by asking, "Does this item help me live the life I want today?" Rather than, "Do I need this?" which frequently resulted in shame and doubt. Diana didn't feel compelled to discard her daughter's primary school artwork when she discovered it tangled with crucial tax records. She put them in a special memory box and emptied the drawer to make room for papers she truly needed. This habit is beautiful because it respects your history while making room for your current. You are curating memories, not wiping them out. Diana found that she naturally became more choosy about what really mattered once she stopped feeling bad about holding on to meaningful objects. When you attempt to do too much at once, have you ever noticed how overwhelming decluttering may feel? Which tiny area would you like to start with? Let me know in the comments. Within 2 weeks of using her 10-minute morning ritual, Diana had organized her kitchen counter, located crucial documents she had been looking for, and established a calm area to begin each day. However, the true change was within. She began to view decluttering as self-care and no longer saw it as a form of punishment. The 1-in-1 rule with a senior twist comes in at number 2. The 1-in-1 rule is certainly nothing new to you, but Diana's version had a significant tweak that made it work for seniors. For every new item you bring home, you must get rid of 1 item immediately. This is the conventional advice, but Diana found that it frequently results in rash choices and regret. Rather, she came up with the 1-in-1 consider rule. She kept a special attention basket by her front door, where she would put anything new she brought into her house, whether it was a gift, a purchase, or even something free. She would then carefully select one item from the same category to recycle, give as a gift, or donate within the next 24 hours. The secret was allowing herself to give it careful thought instead of making snap judgments. When Diana's granddaughter handed her a lovely new jumper for Christmas, she placed it in her consideration basket rather than throwing it in her already overstuffed closet. She discovered 3 sweaters the following day that she had been keeping on hand in case she needed them, even though she hadn't worn them in years. She gave 2 to her neighborhood senior center, where she knew other women would value them, and kept 1 as a backup. This strategy was successful because it eliminated the guilt and pressure. Diana wasn't pressuring herself to part with treasured possessions. She was carefully deciding what should have a place in her life. The lovely thing about this behavior is that it keeps things from building up over time and becoming cluttered without making you feel deprived. You're not rejecting novel ideas. You're saying yes to deliberate living. Could you share something you've been hoarding with someone who would find it more enjoyable? Post in the comments. Someone else might be motivated by you to give up something they've been holding onto out of habit rather than love. Following 3 months of this routine, Diana no longer felt as though her house was closing in on her. Without the shame of an overstuffed house, she had room for new activities and presents. The Sunday photo safari comes in third. This may seem like an odd habit, but it ended up being Diana's favorite aspect of her week. She would grab her phone and go on what she dubbed a photo safari in her own house every Sunday afternoon. She would take pictures of places that were disorganized or cluttered. Here's the twist, though. She would act as though she was a guest who was viewing her place for the first time. What would be particularly noteworthy? What would be hospitable? What would be too much? The pictures were quite illuminating. Diana found that the table in her dining room had turned into a permanent holding area for mail, art supplies, and other stray objects that had no real place. She had gotten so used to passing it every day that she had lost sight of it. However, it appeared disorganized and unwelcoming in the picture. There was no judgment in the picture safari. It has to do with consciousness. If my best friend came over right now, would I feel proud of this space? Diana would ask herself after looking at each picture, and if she didn't, she would add that space to her 10-minute morning tasks the following week. However, if the response was in the affirmative, she would take pride in that area and utilize it as inspiration to make the others better. This habit's ability to let Diana perceive her development was its most potent aspect. She began using her phone to record before and after photos. She could scroll back to see how far she'd come if she was feeling demoralized or like she wasn't making any headway. One picture that held special value was of her bedside dresser. Decades worth of accumulated belongings, old perfume bottles, jewelry she never wore, and papers she intended to file were all visible in the before picture. The after picture, taken 3 months later, revealed a spotless surface with only a few thoughtfully selected objects that made her happy every morning. Have you ever shot pictures of your area to get a new perspective on it? This week, give it a try, and in the comments, tell me what surprised you. Diana discovered that the picture safari kept her inspired and allowed her to view her house as guests would, not as a source of embarrassment, but as a representation of the tranquil existence she was building. The 4th technique is the thank you farewell. The emotional burden of parting with things that had been a part of Diana's life for decades was one of her greatest challenges. Even if she hadn't used anything for years, she would still feel bad about giving it away while holding it in her hands. She created what she dubbed the gratitude goodbye method at that point. She concentrated on appreciating what each object had provided her, rather than on getting rid of stuff. Instead of thinking, I should donate this, Diana held each piece of her mother's china set, which she had inherited but never used, and said, Thank you. Thank you for connecting me to my mother's memory. Thank you for representing hospitality and family gatherings. Thank you for the comfort of knowing I had something special if I needed it. Then she asked herself, how can this continue to bring joy? Diana realized that keeping the china packed away in boxes wasn't honoring it. It was hiding it. She chose to keep 4 special pieces to display in her kitchen where she could see them daily. And she donated the rest to a young couple in her neighborhood who was just starting their life together. The gratitude goodbye method transformed decluttering from a loss into a celebration. Diana wasn't throwing away her past. She was helping her possessions find new purposes. When she found boxes of her late husband's clothes, she didn't force herself to donate everything. She kept his favorite sweater to wear on difficult days, turned another into a memory pillow, and donated the rest to a veterans organization where they would help other men in need. The key was taking time to acknowledge what each item had meant to her life before deciding its next chapter. This approach eliminated the guilt and regret that had stopped Diana from decluttering in the past. She wasn't being wasteful or ungrateful. She was being intentional about what deserved space in her current life. What's one item you've been holding on to that might be ready for a new purpose? Share in the comments. Sometimes talking about it helps us see new possibilities. Diana discovered that when she honored her possessions' past contributions, she felt free to make decisions about their future without guilt or regret. Number 5. The legacy box system. Diana's children had always worried about what would happen to all her possessions someday. And frankly, so had she. She didn't want to burden them with decades of accumulated items they might not want or understand. That's when she created her legacy box system, a way to organize her most meaningful possessions so they could tell their stories to future generations. Diana started with 3 categories: stories to share, useful to pass on, and treasures to keep. For each category, she created specific boxes with detailed labels. But here's what made this system special. Diana didn't just sort items. She wrote their stories. When she placed her grandmother's recipe box in the stories to share category, she included a letter explaining which recipes were family favorites, which ones had funny stories attached, and which ones she'd modified over the years. She photographed herself making her grandmother's apple pie and included printed photos with the recipe. The useful to pass on box contained items that still had practical value. Her barely used stand mixer, quality linens, tools that were still in excellent condition. Diana researched their current value and included care instructions so her children could make informed decisions about keeping or selling them. The treasures to keep box held items that were precious to Diana but might not seem significant to others without context. Her father's military medals, her children's baby shoes, letters from her late husband. Each item came with a story card explaining its importance and when it might be appropriate to pass it on to grandchildren. The legacy box system did something unexpected. It helped Diana rediscover treasures she'd forgotten she had. While organizing her jewelry box, she found her great-grandmother's engagement ring and realized she wanted to give it to her granddaughter for her upcoming 18th birthday, rather than waiting until after she was gone. Creating these legacy boxes also gave Diana peace of mind. She knew her children wouldn't have to guess what was important or feel guilty about donating items that held no meaning for them. Everything was clearly labeled with its story and significance. Have you thought about how your possessions will tell their stories to future generations? What's one item you'd want to include in a legacy box? Share in the comments. Your story might inspire others to think about their own treasures. Diana found that organizing her legacy boxes wasn't morbid or sad. It was empowering. She was taking control of her story and ensuring her most meaningful possessions would be treasured rather than discarded. Number 6. The energy audit approach. Diana noticed that certain areas of her home drained her energy just by looking at them, while others made her feel peaceful and happy. This observation led to her energy audit approach, a way of decluttering based on how spaces made her feel, rather than arbitrary rules about what to keep. Diana started by walking through each room and paying attention to her emotional responses. Her living room bookshelf filled with books she'd loved reading made her feel content and proud. But the closet floor covered with shoes she rarely wore made her feel stressed and overwhelmed every time she opened the door. The energy audit wasn't about getting rid of everything. It was about understanding which possessions and arrangements supported her well-being and which ones depleted it. Diana discovered that her kitchen counter felt chaotic, not because she had too many appliances, but because she had appliances she never used, taking up prime real estate. Her beloved stand mixer deserved its prominent spot because she used it weekly for her famous cookies. But the bread maker she'd used twice in 5 years was creating visual clutter and taking up valuable workspace. The beautiful part of this approach was that it was entirely personal. What energized Diana might drain someone else, and that was perfectly okay. Her extensive collection of vintage teacups made her feel connected to her travels and friendships, so they earned a place of honor in her dining room. But the stack of magazines she'd been meaning to read for months made her feel guilty and behind. So, they found a new home in her building's common area where others could enjoy them. Diana learned to trust her instincts about what felt heavy versus what felt light in her space. When she felt resistance to entering a room or opening a closet, she knew that area needed attention. When she felt pleased and peaceful looking at a space, she knew she'd found the right balance. This habit helped Diana realize that decluttering wasn't about following someone else's rules. It was about creating an environment that supported her unique needs and preferences. What space in your home gives you energy, and what space drains it? Pay attention this week and let me know in the comments what you discover. Diana found that when she organized her home based on energy rather than aesthetics, she naturally gravitated towards spaces that supported her well-being and avoided areas that felt chaotic or overwhelming. Number 7. The future self-visualization. And Diana's final and most powerful habit was something she called future self-visualization. Every time she faced a difficult decluttering decision, she would close her eyes and imagine herself 5 years in the future. What would 67-year-old Diana want and need? What would serve her best as she aged? This perspective shift changed everything. When Diana was deciding whether to keep her extensive collection of formal dresses from her teaching career, she didn't think about past occasions where she'd worn them. Instead, she visualized her future self. Would 67-year-old Diana attend formal events that required cocktail dresses? Probably not. Would she want to spend her precious time and limited closet space maintaining clothes she'd likely never wear again? Definitely not. Diana kept 2 of her most beloved dresses that still fit perfectly and brought back wonderful memories. The rest went to a consignment shop where they could help other women feel beautiful at special occasions. The future self-visualization helped Diana make decisions about her physical space too. She imagined herself at 70 navigating her home. Would she want to step around stacks of magazines? Would she want to dust dozens of decorative objects? Would she want to maintain a formal dining room she rarely used? This wasn't about preparing for a decline. It was about preparing for freedom. Diana began to see her home through the lens of accessibility and ease. She moved frequently, used items to eye level, eliminated trip hazards, and created clear pathways through every room. But the most profound changes came from imagining her future emotional needs. Diana realized that her 67-year-old self would value experiences over possessions, connections over collections, and peace over perfection. She began choosing activities over accumulation, investing in friendships over furniture, and creating space for new adventures, rather than preserving reminders of old ones. This visualization technique helped Diana let go of the version of herself she used to be and embrace the person she was becoming. She wasn't getting rid of her past. She was making space for her future. The future self-visualization also helped Diana involve her family in meaningful ways. She could explain to her children that she wasn't getting rid of their childhood toys because she didn't love them. She was passing them on because future Diana would prefer to remember their childhood through photos and stories rather than storage boxes. What do you think your future self would want from your current space? Take a moment to imagine yourself 5 years from now and share one insight in the comments. Diana discovered that when she made decisions based on who she was becoming rather than who she had been, every choice felt lighter and more hopeful. 6 months after Diana started these 7 habits, her transformation was remarkable. Her once cluttered home had become a peaceful sanctuary where every item had a purpose and a place. But the real change wasn't in her possessions. It was in her relationship with them. Diana no longer felt guilty about letting go of things that no longer served her. She had learned to honor her past while creating space for her future. Her morning 10-minute sorts had become a cherished ritual that set a positive tone for each day. The one-in-one consider rule had stopped the accumulation that used to overwhelm her. Her Sunday photo safaris helped her stay aware and motivated. The gratitude goodbye method had eliminated the emotional weight of decluttering. Her legacy boxes gave her peace of mind about the future. The energy audit approach had created a home that truly supported her well-being, and the future self-visualization had helped her make decisions from a place of hope rather than fear. Diana's friends began asking for her decluttering advice, and she realized she discovered something powerful. Decluttering after 60 isn't about getting rid of your life, it's about curating it. At 62, Diana had never felt more in control of her environment or more optimistic about her future. Her home had become a launching pad for new adventures rather than a museum of past experiences. If Diana's story resonates with you, I want to hear about your own decluttering journey. Which of these 7 habits feels most doable for you right now? Drop a comment below and let me know. I read every single one and often reply with personalized advice. If this video helped you see decluttering in a new light, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need this gentle approach to creating more space and peace in their life. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell. Remember, you're not too old to create the life you want. You're just getting started on your best chapter yet. Until next time, keep creating space for what matters most.